Hello and welcome to the next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. So, Graham, we don't have a guest this week.
No, well, we do each other. So basically, for the first time in, well, several episodes, we're actually going to be talking to ourselves.
So that'd be a long silence.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We always have plenty to say, and I love having guests, and we have plenty more lined up for 2024. But right now, it just seemed an opportunity for us to talk about how we view what's going to happen in 2024. And I shared with you a few points which we could sort of structure a conversation around. But sort of the five things that come to mind that might impact us in 2024?
I noticed the first one on your list seemed to consider the politics in your favourite country, Graham. I
Well,
can't say that was one that particularly enamoured me because if I was crossing over the pond and thinking about an election coming up this year, I'd be thinking, oh no, third election running, I want both candidates to lose.
yeah, I have a slightly different view of that, obviously, but no, as we're recording this prior to Christmas, one of the things that's just happened over in America, which really worries me, is that Colorado's Supreme Court has made it clear that they want to take Donald Trump's name off the ballot. So, in other words, those people in Colorado who want to vote for Donald Trump, as it stands at the moment, won't be able to. And they're using a sort of an arcane use of the Constitution to actually say, actually, he triggered an insurrection. Well, he never did. He was never
Yeah,
charged with that, and
the
that means that
thing that's
they're
come out to me,
frustrating democracy.
yeah, the thing that's come out to me is actually I've stopped respecting the American legal system.
Mm. Yeah, well,
So what
it's
we got
been
going,
weaponized, Kevin, I think, and that's one of the things that I wanted to sort of bring up in this. I
mm,
know it's politics and it turns people off, etc. But it is important because we're probably going to have our own UK election
yeah.
possibly in
But the
this
thing
year
that
as
bothers
well.
me, Graham, is that the UK, in most things that happen in the United States, the UK seems to be about 5 or 10 years behind.
Mm,
Uh,
well, less maybe this time, but I agree with you. And
uh,
what that, but to win at all costs, and
yeah,
in America, I don't think Biden has a prayer without
no.
all these extra things.
But
Stop him in any other way. Um, whether that's ballots that are not really there, that people are actually sending things in that are actually just printed, and that no signature checking, no, sending people. We're having in this country an electoral roll. Well, over there, it's horrendously out of date.
yeah,
Yet, oddly enough, all these people, and well, not all of them, but many of these people who are no longer at their address seem to vote.
but
There's
the thing that I find quite peculiar, Graham, is the fact that the legal system seems to be operated politically, uh,
mm,
with elected attorneys and so on.
yes,
So
mm,
we've seen the former President Trump
mm,
brought to court in states and
mm,
cities that are ostensibly entirely run by Democrats. The
mhm.
Democrats have turned the court system political.
Well, that in effect, the Colorado judgment was 4-3, and all those four that voted for were, well, as you can
And
imagine, all
that
Democrats.
across the UK,
Mm,
there's already seen the elected officials, I think, in the UK going further than they should have done, and have
mm,
for a few years now voted for police commissioners.
mm,
Uh, Somebody to keep the chief constable of the police force locally to account. And
mm.
it's become a political nomination. And that to me is completely wrong. The only thing you should be worried about in that particular area is ethics, not politics.
Well, I think there's going to be another thing as well, which is in the run up to the 2020 US election. There were riots. There were,
Yes.
mostly peaceful riots, and the guy saying that to the TV had a burning building behind him. I mean, basically, they weren't peaceful at all. They were. It was just wholesale destruction of cities. Um, but it's almost an allowable. But basically, they had riots. And now, what are we seeing now? We're seeing this sort of mealy-mouthed approach to supporting Israel, and all these people, walking through cities in our country, praying in the street, upsetting people effectively, but having a view uh, about about politics effectively, and that will possibly lead to a reaction from people who are usually quiet on the matter.
Mm.
And in America, they've got an open border and people just coming through. And there are people who want to give them the vote. These are people who illegally are in their country.
Yeah.
So you have to argue, is this yet another way in which they are intending to, what's the right word? Engage, a false way of actually getting to a result. And next year as well is probably going to be the year when the that list of reprobates who turned up on that island will be named, including perhaps some of our own and even some of our own royalty. Epstein's Island, etc., Epstein's list. A lot of things are going to happen in 2024, which are really going to upset things. And I fear that there's going to be a certain level of violence that is going to come along with it. I can't help but think that's going to drive so much of our world thinking and potentially economy, potentially the way in which we view each other, etc. I think that's going to be an important part of what's going to happen this next year.
I think you could well be right, Graham. Of course, we've got our own election in the UK. And for the first time, I'm looking at an election coming up where I don't want to vote for either party.
Well, I've got to say, I'm pretty much of the same view. My concern in this country is how we have. Um, uh, I'm a great believer in immigration. Full stop. I really am. I am an absolute. I'm a dead set against illegal immigration. Because a member of my family had who married my youngest son had to go through the process, and the process was thorough, was costly, was worrisome, and yet I see these people wandering across on boats from France, um, and just effectively being given a ticket to stay here. That I'll be honest with you, it's abhorrent to me. Again, I'm not against immigration. I think we need, as a country that's got an older generation growing, etc. We need people to fill the gaps. So I'm positively for it. I just
With
I'm
that,
not for an open border.
I think we've seen in certain sectors of the economy a downside of Brexit, that a lot of staff that traditionally worked there have gone
Mm,
home.
mm.
Hospitality, I don't think has recovered yet.
Well, I mean, any listeners will know that you and I differed on Brexit, but at the end of the day, I don't really put all of the shortage of labour down to Brexit. I think there's a demographic
Well,
thing. It probably didn't help,
there are
Kevin, that some,
multiple factors, and
yeah,
COVID's part of it,
yeah,
Brexit's part of it.
hmm
But we have got sectors of the economy that we've traditionally relied on immigrant or temporary labour
and
from overseas to be part of.
that's okay, but to bring people into whether it's America or the UK or whatever, who literally hate the country that they're coming to, that worries me. Not, I'm of an age when I can more or less say my piece. And I think a lot of our listeners might be thinking, well, Graham, you have a view, etc. But, I want to be welcoming. And yeah, okay, all of that is nice. But when they come in and they want to change the way we have operated for years and decades, etc., and our culture, you know, it it worries me that we are allowing that. And the truth is, I would welcome anyone into this country who will contribute and make make a positive contribution. And part of that is actually just, I don't know, mucking along with the way in which we do things here.
Mm. But
So I think, I mean, so there's a lot of, and, might be some people listening to this might be thinking, well, don't really agree with you, but that's why we want you to get in touch with us and tell us what your thoughts are. But it does worry me, and I think that as a first point, Kevin, that worries me over the next 2024 because you've got the elections, and the
mm,
elections will raise the temperature much more than it is now, probably more than it's ever been.
yeah, I don't see a bit of a very pleasant election
No,
either here
no,
or in the United States.
no. I
I
mean,
think that bit of things over and done with.
they've tried to stop Trump in any which way, and I think it was Tucker Carlson I think over the autumn period, had a conversation with Trump and basically said, well, they've tried everything, but don't you feel concerned that they'll ultimately try and do what they did with Kennedy? And effectively they would, um, they'll try and assassinate the chap, and I hope and pray that is definitely not the case. That cannot be the way that
Are you getting
serious
into
countries work.
conspiracy theories there?
Well, it wasn't just mine. I'm just repeating what somebody else has suggested. But basically, when you think about how hard they're trying to stop him from actually succeeding, then there's one way in which that can happen ultimately. But it would be such a retrograde step for them and for the rest of the world, I think, in many ways. Because I think he will come into power if he wins, if he successfully wins, and he will do something about the war in Ukraine. He will do something about the war in the Middle East because he's done it before, and he has the ear of people right round the world and the respect of the people right around the world, if not for about 40% of the Americans. But
And the flip
anyway,
side of that, Graham, is that while we hope that that might lead to conflict stopping, it could just as easily lead to conflict increasing.
well, it didn't happen in his last term. So basically, he didn't have wars. He prevented wars, and that's they all said before he became president. Oh, we're going to be at World War III. Well, that
Well,
didn't happen. But as soon as Biden came in, not so much. That is part and parcel of what's potentially happening now. Anyway, we've done that politicking thing, Kevin. We can go on now to something else that's happening around us.
I think one of the interesting things to look at, Graham, is the economy. Uh,
Mm,
I remember recording conversations for my other podcast, Grow CFO Show,
mm,
in the early part of 2023. I recorded one about inflation,
yeah.
then recorded one about cost pressures and the need to take cost out of your organization. Recorded one about interest rates. Recorded several about the scarcity of money available for startups, scale ups, etc., and
Hmm.
the pressure that was putting on finance teams. I think it'd be interesting to look forward to that in 2024.
Mm,
Where we're recording this literally just before Christmas in 2023. I heard on the radio yesterday better than expected inflation figures. I think inflation dropped to 3.9%,
yes.
and folks speculating that we might start to see a reduction of interest rates earlier than expected. So I don't know. I just have this feeling that economically, 2024 might be quite a bit easier than 2023.
The way in which I'm reading what's happening in the investing markets is that it's almost like an each way bet. You have almost as many people saying, "Well, hold on a minute, we might have a right to dive in terms of the stocks and shares, etc." And then on the other side, there are people saying, "Oh no, no, this looks really good," but for the reasons that you're saying, that the cost of money is coming down, etc. And so there's going to be more interest in investing in all kinds of different things, whether that's alternative investments, but also into stocks and shares. So, and I'm taking a greater interest in that because it's something of interest to me, Kevin, that I'm spending a bit more time investing in stocks and shares, also in various funds, etc., as a way of actually trying to create a little bit more income coming in.
Yeah. And I think following that along, Graham, the area that is really going to need to go to market and raise money in the next
Mm.
12 months are going to be all of those initiatives that are leading to carbon neutral. Now,
Yeah.
I personally don't believe we're ever going to see anything great happening
Do
out
you
of that,
know? I, do,
but I still see lots and lots of entrepreneurs coming along with some great stuff. I
yeah.
see governments that kind of have a political need to make some of these things work. So the investment has to be brought to bear on those projects. So I think there are going to be some great opportunities as a result.
I think the general idea of using the resources on this earth in a more productive way is absolutely the right thing to think about. But to do that at the expense of things that have kept us going and still keep us going, like fossil fuels, etc., seems ridiculous. And it's because we own, I don't know, probably 1% of the world's sort of contribution um to to carbon in the air. The Chinese, on the other hand, and are building, digging out coal. They're building more coal capacity. So if you don't cure the Chinese, then what the heck are we doing? Um, worsening the situation for our businesses. And I think, the government has said, all right, we'll bounce back a little bit, the cars, etc., and, the transfer from diesel to EVs. And I've talked about this before, but I have got an EV. But that it's not, I didn't get it because, I wanted to save the world. That was like, the 10th thing on the list. The first thing on the list was, can I save some money? And the answer to that was yeah. And actually, the latest update on the Tesla, which I haven't actually got around to changing it yet, but I believe you can actually transfer the opportunity of, when you press the horn, I think you can make that a sort of a random fart noise. So I mean, the thing is, I don't. I I think I'm going to have to do it just because it's there, Kevin.
Yeah.
But it's the thing is with these cars, because you can actually do everything by wire. If it all updates, so you've got this supercomputer of a car, and it gets updates. All these fancy things that change are all done by releases. So, but going back to the point, I personally. I think it's almost like they're complaining too much, Kevin.
Mm.
I think this whole thing is another way of taking more money out of our pockets over the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. Is it really there? Are the temperatures going to go really that far up? Oh well, all these people agree that they are, but didn't the same people agree that COVID was going to wipe us out? And all these doctors said it was a well, the doctors that didn't agree with the COVID prognosis weren't allowed to speak.
Mm. Graham, we touch on economy there. I'm looking back at the list you sent me through before we started this conversation.
Yeah.
And one of the things you put on that list is the
Mm.
growth of high net worth individuals. Now,
Yeah.
individuals worth more than 1 million. Now, you're saying that's set to grow from 3 million to 4 million
Yeah.
over 5
Mm.
years.
Mm.
Now, that surely you need an economic recovery to underpin that.
I think there will be some form of economic recovery. I think the election season and all the rest of that could damage it, could slow it down. But I think over the next 5 years or so, I think there's no doubt that the wealthier are becoming wealthier. So what's happening there is that the number of high net worth individuals in the UK is set to increase. Now the thing about the classification of a high net worth individual, it used to be £250,000 worth of effectively disposable assets above and beyond the value of your property. But now I believe it's going to 430,000. There are other qualifications to do, how much money you earn in the year, etc. But basically, and there are other sort of classifications like sophisticated investors, which there are other rules that you have to follow to become one of those. But the point of the growth of high net worth individuals, I think it is likely to happen. I think there will be more high net worth individuals over the near term, and I think that's part and parcel of the fact that the middle is getting hollowed out, and
Mm.
so there'll be. It's a bit like the top 1% is always going. For instance, the classic way of looking at socialism is that, right, a week on Tuesday, everybody loses everything that they've got, and we're all going to get the same amount of money. Let's just say that's going to be, for the sake of argument, £100,000 each, right? So everybody gets £100,000, even though you've had a multi-million empire, if you like. Everybody gets 100,000. How long do you think that the normal pyramid of wealth would take to rectify itself? So the guys with 100,000 who ploughed in effort go right to the 1%, and the guys who effectively spent it all go right down to the bottom, into the mass, uh, got no money.
Yeah,
And it wouldn't be long, Kevin.
it wouldn't be long at all because we saw effectively that when the Iron Curtain fell.
Mm, mm,
Eastern Europe, from everybody being more or less equal, but I'm
yeah,
sure there were lots of people out there before then that were, by political means, not equal.
yeah.
Suddenly that wall falls away, and we see some very rich individuals able to come to the UK, buy vast sums of property and football clubs.
Yeah, the reason I put that on my list is that my business is all to do with the supply of data and campaigns marketing to the affluent.
Interesting
So
thing I
it's
see there.
interesting to me that that constituency is going to grow.
Yeah. The interesting thing I see there is that if you believe the opinion polls at the moment, we are likely in the UK to have a government at some point this year of a different political persuasion that does not like high net worth individuals.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, they're led by one. I mean, and you look at most of the leading figures in the Labour Party, and they're the North London sort of wealthy mafia. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't. I mean, they might try and sort of, a bit like the Scottish have just done, lob on more money and they're actually charging the people who are making wealth in Scotland even more in terms of income tax. So, what will happen probably is a lot of people who have said, "Nah, I don't want that. I'm going to move to England." And the thing is, they could, drive 150 miles south or down into Newcastle, and you might have an awful lot of Scots living in Newcastle before long, Kevin. There might be a sort of an enclave,
Well,
uh, you know,
living 20 miles from the Scottish border, I've often chuckled to myself and wondered if it's worth moving that 20 miles north to the Socialist Republic of
not
Scotland.
well,
At the
not if
time.
you're earning any money. But
That's it. Wait till you retire, Graham, and then go up there to suck the benefits up.
well, maybe so. Well, as a half Scot, then I kind of have a massive soft spot for the Scottish. But at the end of the day, the government that they've got is I think is damaging people. But I think yes, for me personally, for my business, what is interesting is that affluent part of the world is going to grow. But bear in mind also, Kevin, if you work out the numbers, if you work out the numbers that we've got now living in the economy, then the maths of it don't really change. Shall we say the top 1% are the ones who are doing brilliantly. The next sort of 15%, yeah, they're doing, graduated, they're doing pretty well. Anything below that, struggling
Mm.
or basket case. So, and if you look at the 3 to 4 million, it's in line with the growth in the world in terms of it's in line with the growth in population in this country. So it doesn't surprise me that we are going to have more, but I think there will be more wealth flowing to the wealthy.
Yeah. Now, something that's on both of our lists, Graham, artificial intelligence.
Mm,
You've got AI in marketing, I've got AI in finance. And actually, as we put this out, I'm running a series on the Grow CFO show of 3 or 4 episodes all talking about AI in finance because it
Yeah,
is big.
yeah,
It is massive.
yes.
It's changing everything.
Hmm. Well, does it's almost like it's going to um, take people out of roles. And because basically the people who did some of those, shall we say, manually intensive tasks um, will be gone. And one of the things I did when I talked about investing earlier is that I invested in a company who are applying AI to effectively business processes. So their real skill has been in, real processing of information and all the rest of that. And they they were saying, I think one of the stories that they told was, it's kind of related to the sort of area you're looking at. But one of the things that they were saying is they work with British Airways, and oddly enough, we're flying later on a couple of months' time that we're flying out to Bermuda and on British Airways. So I'm looking forward to that process. But if we had cause to complain, Kevin, then that complaint would take on average around about 5 weeks to resolve. As opposed to when they intervened and had sort of machine reading and all that kind of stuff and the process mapped out, that 5 weeks, I mean, don't get me wrong, but it might be out by a bit, was less than a week. So in other words, it collapsed the processing time just, you know, to a matter of hours from weeks. And that was the applicability of sort of AI in a process. And I think the people who are likely to succeed, even in your finance market, will be the ones who have a little bit more than just the ability to apply AI or from the sort of regular sort of providers. It will be the ability to provide AI within a sort of a structural arrangement. So Tesla, for instance, I mean, some people believe that Tesla have got probably they're going to increase their market cap by something like 10 times over the next 10 years or so. And the reason for that is they produce things,
Hmm.
but they then use AI to make those things potentially drive themselves. So they'll produce cars that can drive themselves. So if you then start thinking about who's set to lose? Well, maybe who's set to lose? Taxi drivers. Now, if you had a car rock up and it's safer than a guy driving, and if you've been in taxis and well, certainly the area I live, uh, I don't feel safe because they drive way too fast. But if you had a taxi that would turn up there, it's safe. Don't get me wrong, the first time in it, you're going to be a bit nervous, a lot nervous. But you get in it, you get to your destination, unscathed. But the car's driven you safely and effectively. And you probably just pay by your phone or whatever. But effectively, why would you need taxi drivers? Well, you wouldn't.
Not quite. And that's going to be the big impact that lower skilled jobs are definitely going to disappear.
Mm,
And we think that 60 to 70% of finance jobs won't exist in 10 years' time.
mm,
We're not convinced that there will be a drop of the 60 to 70% in terms of numbers of people employed in finance. The number might even be the same, but
mm,
the things that they're going to be doing is going to be very different. Um, the transactional role will go, the added value role will likely increase. And likely increase because you can produce more and give greater insight with the help of AI.
mm. Well, you've talked about repositioning the finance officer at whatever level to have a greater impact in terms of business strategy.
Oh yeah.
And if you have people who can truly leverage AI within that context, the business as a whole, because I would imagine it's not only it's a skill to be able to do that and to understand how this works, but listening to something on Instagram the other day, and it was saying the girl was saying, "Well, I get AI to talk back to me in different ways, using different voices, active or all kinds of different voices, explaining, concepts." She was I think, at university or whatever, but she was learning things. And one of the ways in which she felt more able to take things on board, which is a bit sad when you think about it, just learning by rote sort of thing. But to get the concepts embedded, they were using AI to actually sort of synthesize the lecture notes and then read back to the person. And, applying that sort of logic to the finance world, you'd think that that ability to actually um, take the numbers and then make sense of them such that there's a business decision or
Yeah.
a range of business decisions at the end of it. Um, that takes more than the average financial officer.
Two big developments that have happened this year are from Microsoft. If you look at the world of Excel and the spreadsheet that we
Mm,
find love hiding behind,
mm,
Microsoft have introduced, and they're still in the process of rolling it out, and not
mm,
everybody's got it yet, something called
mm,
Copilot.
mm,
Copilot is effectively an AI tool sitting inside your spreadsheet that can tell you how to do things, that can draw
mm,
conclusions from the data, can do all sorts of clever things.
mm,
The other thing that Microsoft have done is enabled their Office products or their 365 products with Python programming language,
mm.
which is the way of automating things from one spreadsheet to another spreadsheet or in and out of a particular system or whatever. Now, does that mean that we've all got to learn how to write Python? No, it doesn't.
No,
Because
no.
actually, you can go along to ChatGPT and say, I want a Python project program that does this, and it'll write the darn thing for you. So
Mm.
yeah, you've got to have a bit of understanding of roughly how the system works and so on, but you don't need to know the syntax, the language inside out anymore in order to write that program.
Yeah, I was just reading earlier today, Kevin, that coders are spending less time coding and actually more time using, these learning models to actually figure out the code that they need. I suppose in a way, if you can get your job done in half an hour rather than half a day, you do that as well. So this idea of actually, don't get me wrong, you have to have certain amount of knowledge, and I think that's why you're saying 60%, or did you say that 40% will stay or 60% will stay?
I think 60% of jobs as we know them today will disappear.
Right. So basically, but there'll be some people who will still say stay because you have to have a certain amount of, shall we say, appreciation of that area to be able to implement the kind of things that are going to be. Um, I don't know. At the end of the day, you could take it a negative point of view and say that humans, what are they good for? Absolutely nothing. But the whole idea of this is that I don't see that it's certainly not a 2024 thing. I think there's going to be still a lot of learning that will go on and revelations and things will go quicker and quicker.
Yeah.
But the concern I have is the one that Elon Musk uh, is bringing up. Is this, the when do you pass that moment where the AI just does not regard the human race as being anything other than I don't know, a burden,
Well,
and it
we've
goes beyond itself, and
Cybermen wanting to upgrade us all.
make it impossible for us to eat or drink, or I mean, there's all kinds of things that could be done, which is slightly worrying. Well, it was a lot worrying, but whether or not you believe it is another issue.
Is I think 2023 was the year of ChatGPT. Go back 12 months, hardly anybody had heard of the thing.
Mm,
Few people had used it.
hmm.
Everybody knows about it now.
Yeah.
Most of the planet have got an account and have used it for something or other.
Hmm.
I think 2024 is the year when you're not necessarily going to ChatGPT,
mm,
because in nearly every app that you're using, there'll be some sort of AI embedded. One in particular that I use in recording the Grow CFO show. I know for this podcast we use Fathom, but I
mm,
use called Otter AI for the Grow CFO show to write show notes and to do various things. I can say to Otter, at Otter, write me a summary of this conversation.
mm.
I can then say at Otter, turn that summary into a LinkedIn post.
Mm.
You're going to
I,
see
I,
that over nearly all of the apps that we use going forward.
it, it, it's, it will almost certainly deliver a change in behavior. If you feel that you're being manipulated by computers, then they'll it will probably get a reaction in human behavior because there's only so many LinkedIn posts that you want to read from um at the end of the day, these systems are guided by um, big entities who might have a viewpoint. So, you know, if it's guided by, for instance, um, Musk, then he's an open. He believes that it's like open source. It's also free speech led. But if you're in the, dare I say, Microsoft, Google realm, where they might have a political bent, they want you to be woker than you're prepared to be, then there's only so many articles you're going to read on LinkedIn before you're saying, I'm choking on this.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't agree with this. It's a bit,
There is the worry still about AI that if it doesn't have enough information from you, enough prompting from you to write
mm,
the thing, that it'll make stuff up. And I got a classic yesterday when I was doing that. I'd actually been writing the weekly newsletter that I put on LinkedIn.
yeah.
And I said to my AI assistant, "Oh, write me a conclusion paragraph for the following," meaning to cut and paste the rest of the article then into the prompt. I forgot to paste the article in. So it wrote me a wonderful conclusion paragraph or three paragraphs. But the stuff it was talking about, I started reading and how did you get that out of the article I just gave you?
And you haven't given that.
Fantastic
Yeah.
conclusions. It could have
Well,
concluded just about anything, but as you probably point out, there were bits of wokeness cropping in and things like that. But
I,
it
I,
gave
I,
once I finally realised my mistake and dusted it again, pasting the rest of the article in, it gave me a very good conclusion.
mhm. Well, I mean, I hope that woke's pretty much dead in 2024. I just think the worst excesses of it. I mean, there are some parts of just treating other human beings with dignity and respect, etc. But that does not mean that you have to have one particular
It does not mean that
viewpoint.
you have to rewrite history.
No, or drag down statues that are celebrating what happened in history. That and these frankly lunatics who think that they are owed reparations because they've got a certain shade of skin color and all to do with slavery. Slavery was completely bad, and the UK did its bit to abolish it. So up to a point, we should put a little tick in that column. Doesn't mean to say that the world has fixed itself. It hasn't. But the idea that somehow I have nothing to do with slavery, but I'm a half Scottish, and I'm sure somebody in Scotland was a slave at one stage. Therefore, can I have a bit of reparations as well? It's ridiculous. No, you can't. Get on and earn your own money. And at the end of the day, you're not a victim. Just go and do your thing, whatever your thing is. You're brilliant at writing, then write. If you're great at drawing, then draw. You're going to be up against some fairly stiff competition now, of course, with computer writing and computer drawing. But hey, if that's what you want to do, I mean, maybe music is the thing. Maybe music is the thing. That's
Well,
that's
it's
the
funny
thing.
you should say maybe music is the thing because
Mm,
you know, don't you remember that great outcry in the 1970s from musicians when somebody invented the synthesizer?
Well, yeah,
Oh, I think AI, as far as writing and drawing, is just the synthesizer that music had all those years ago.
yeah, yeah. I I don't know quite what's going to happen, but it's for our generation, Kevin. It feels like it's overwhelming
Hmm.
in the sense that there's so many things, and
And
you can't take on board everything. So I think the key thing is, when it comes to the next 100 days, one of the things that we're about is almost like we have this Catholic sort of view of the world that we take on all comers. We have all kinds of people, some of which their views we might not necessarily share, but it's definitely a
yeah,
platform for them to share them.
we even allow Manchester United fans on.
Well, we should do more about stopping them in the future. I think we should have a tick
Which
box. Are,
brings
are
us
you
round to that lovely subject of football. What's going to happen in football in 2024, Graham?
Well, as we speak, there's been a ruling about whether or not UEFA have almost like this right to stop this European Super League or its next version. Um, I'm of the view that it's not broken. Yes, we can do more with the game or less with the game when it comes to things like, you know, I know that you have VAR. We're now back in the championship, so we don't have VAR. Weirdly, there have been about in the home games that I've watched so far this year. I don't know, is it about 10 or something like that? Um, there's probably been in the region of about six occasions I can recall where I've been thinking, oh, if VAR was on, we might have had you know, a, a
Hmm.
different result.
Yeah, I was
But I
thinking
don't miss it,
back
Kevin.
the other night when we were thrown out of the Carabao Cup by Chelsea. Chelsea should have finished that game with 10 men. And I'm sure if one of the bookings had been reviewed by VAR, they would have upgraded it to red.
I,
And
I haven't
that
watched the
would have made
game.
a substantial difference.
I I think football is. I think that I know there are people who think, well, it's got to evolve because money's involved.
Mm,
And the way I look at it is that both of us were dragged into our football teams when we were quite young, and we've stayed with them through thick and thin. And the same goes for most football fans. There's only a few at the margins who hop from one leading club to another leading club. But at the end of the day, most of us stick with the same club, etc., and we, follow it up or down. It's the people that watch the game that I think are important.
mm,
But the money comes from those who watch the game from home on their sofa.
yes.
And that's the sadness of it, that the money that the money men can make from people on sofas in America or in other parts of the world, India and all kinds of other places where our football is loved because of the way in which the people like me go along to the grounds and scream and shout and bay at the referee. But the point is, the people who do that make the product successful are going to be potentially put at risk. So yeah, I don't want to stop progress, but I don't want to see Leeds never play Man United again.
No,
Man
exactly.
United are lifted into some sort of
And
fictional Super League.
I definitely do not want to see that taking place. One thing that I've realized since our upturn in fortunes at Newcastle and potentially having a lot of money is that I don't think financial fair play exists to stop clubs buying success. I think
Mm.
financial fair play exists to protect the cartel of the top six so nobody else can break into it. I also think the European Super League is all about protecting the cartel of the top six.
Yeah, yeah, but
I think
yeah,
that's a great shame. There's no way I want to see a game that goes to just being a few competitive clubs. We see that happening virtually in Scotland, where there's two teams and the rest.
yeah, but
Well,
there are still the rest, and I personally, I don't really want to see the Scots and English mix, because there are going to be winners and definite losers. And if you're supporting, I don't know, for the sake of argument, Inverness or, you know, it,
You
you know,
want that big game against Celtic. You want the big game against Rangers.
I don't mind if we draw them in some sort of European competition, etc. But I just don't see that happening. But then again, who knows? I mean, the world could change, but will it change in 2024, Kevin? It'll probably move toward the money, man. I think that's probably
It'd be a great shame if you had a system, and I'll have to add at that bit. There'd be a great shame if you had a system that didn't allow an Aston Villa to come along and
Mm,
invade the top four.
mm,
Didn't allow Leicester City to run away with the league when some of the big boys were having an off season.
mm.
That'd be a
It,
great shame.
yeah, I think in some ways, if you took out the vast majority of foreign money out of the UK, out of the league that we've got, you would have the more or less the equivalent of the championship right now. There's
You
some
want
great football teams, and you know, and the truth is, there's not a huge amount of money, going around. At my club's probably got as much as anybody has got the most. The problem is, I think the best kind of football we saw was in the 70s, maybe the 80s, etc., where you basically had some brilliant football. But then I don't know. What can
Did
I
you,
say?
Graham? Did you? I remember watching back in the days when you had match of the day with two games on, you sort of no live football on telly. I remember back in the 70s watching my second team, Leeds United.
Hmm.
I think they were playing Southampton.
Oh,
They strung together, was it 20 or 25 consecutive passes? And everybody went mad and said, oh, this is wonderful football.
hmm.
That's probably the level we get in the Championship these days. It's normal that happens every game, every week in the Premiership.
Yeah, yeah. Mm, I, Leeds were an absolutely unbelievable team at that particular time, but we're not now. And I think that there's an acceptance that that would happen with these top six teams now. That acceptance is no longer there. It's about money, not necessarily about the players or how good they are as a club or the impact they're making on the world or what. It's about the money. And for me, nothing beats going to Liverpool and beating them on their own patch, or the same with Man United, or the same with Man City. So that is the bit that is the thrilling bit for the teams that are not quite in the same money bracket. I don't know, Kevin. I don't know what's going to happen with football, but it's interesting. I just think hopefully my wish for 2024 is that Leeds can somehow manufacture a return to the Premier League, that Newcastle can do really well, maybe in a cup. Well, the only cup that you're left in at the moment is the same cup as we are. So until we go out, maybe. But
That's going to be an interesting one of the point that this show's broadcast because we've drawn our local rival Sunderland in the third round.
right, okay.
We're probably out of the FA Cup now.
Yeah, well, that doesn't surprise me. I don't know. Let's hope not. But you know, the only other thing that I wanted to sort of touch on is that I was in in my sort of ensuite bathroom. I have this sort of little casing which it's got five stones, and somebody explained to me that they are stones that sort of represent. And I might have got this wrong. I might have got one at least, or maybe two of them wrong. But the following five things, and one's wealth, one's health, one's love, one's learning, one's social. Now, I might have got them wrong. There might be a different one, but broadly speaking, it's those areas. And if you think about the factors that go to make for your own personal well-being, when it comes to things like wealth, then you need enough money to get by, and so therefore work's important and so forth. Health, whether it's me doing my 10,000 steps a day or, you walking the dog doing the same sort of thing. Um, Love, obviously, we've both been in long-term marriages and so forth, but and our families are growing. So there's all that extra sort of love to go around. Learning, like you were saying,
Never
AI
too
is
old to
almost like,
learn.
say again?
Never too old to learn, Graham.
No, no, you shouldn't be. The other thing is with artificial intelligence, you almost feel obliged to
Mm.
catch up with it. But then I guess social is. I tried not to put the word community because it always the word community always worries me because it feels like at the edge of the word. If you think about it as a circle and you put community in, then the edge of the circle looks like it's got barriers up because a community isn't really plural. It's sort of singular. So and it's a bit like it doesn't really include everybody. I don't know. It's a strange way of looking at the word community. But the point is, for me, I prefer residence. That I live in this area, and therefore, you know, that's who you are. But community is, I don't know. It just seems like a weird word. But social, just the way in which you get involved in your local or the world. Um, so if you looked at those things, Kevin, what do you kind of, or not so much wish for yourself, but what do you think your impact or how those things will impact you over the next year?
2024, as I look at those, I'm probably going backwards on your list because I think for me, the last one is fairly important. Um, I've trapped myself inside the house far too much this year. Working from home is one thing, but I've had times where I've barely left the village all week.
Mm,
That's going to change in 24.
mm. I'm with you on that as well. It can be, for years I've worked from home. So basically, and this really helps. Zoom helps because effectively you can talk to somebody and it feels like you're in the room. But I agree, nothing better than actually getting out and about and meeting people, and that's certainly my plan for, or part of my plan for next year.
Health's a big one,
Mm,
around for a long time, which links into the loved one
yeah,
of four grandchildren,
yeah.
family. Hopefully, it doesn't get any bigger than that. I think four's enough. But no, that's going to require a lot of time and input.
Yeah, well, first of all, you're blessed with four. We're only up to two at the moment, but if we can get two of the kids to start thinking about that, that'd be great. But I agree, and that really does. If you think about love and stuff and things of that nature, I mean, if people are unattached to somebody, then there's all. How do you get to know somebody? How do you get involved with somebody? It's a whole thing, It's must yeah, if you think about starting again now, Kevin, if you were like
Oh,
back to when you're 18 or something, but you're 18 now, you there's just so much going on. I mean, you'd probably be making Instagram posts, Kevin.
oh, perish the thought.
I know,
Instagram's one of those systems I've never worked out how to use, and I don't intend to.
no, well,
LinkedIn's bad enough.
I don't know if we I'm sure that's, you know, it's this idea of, I see these posts where women in particular are saying, "Oh, the man's got to earn at least $200,000 before I'll actually go out with him, and he's got to be 6 foot." And then somebody calmly points out, "Well, actually, you've narrowed down the populace of males in America to 2%. And and why do you think they're going to be interested in you?"
Well,
So in other words, keep you know, keep your options open because you never know where it's going to come along from. And my journey started in a nightclub, and I was when they say in marketing, you can't just go along and say, "I want to marry you."
you did.
Well, actually, there may have been a bit of drink involved, but the point is, she still has a written contract to the effect, or piece of paper with me writing on saying I'm going to marry you. But basically, I guess it was love at first sight. So maybe there's something in that. But I don't know. If you were back at 18, Kevin, I'm sure you'd love that.
Oh, I don't know. That's a horrible thought being back at 18.
Mm,
I think I was pleased that I was 18 in the 1970s with all that great music around, a
yeah,
completely different world with no technology. That
yeah.
was nice.
Oh, I don't disagree with you. I think we grew up in a really interesting time. But I think the kids now have a fantastic opportunity to make good. I think there's going to be some massive, massive challenges for them. I just hope we can avoid um, killing each other in terms of the way in which, whether that's on a domestic level or international level. The one thing that's wrong with the world is war, but it seems to be the persistent thing.
You'd
Um,
think after
and
two great big ones in the last century, would have got rid of them. But seems not.
yeah, you'd think that, but we have to remain positive, and on that note of being positive, what's your positive thought that you'd like to communicate to the next 100 days listeners right now?
2024 is going to be a great year, Graham.
Well, on that note, I think we should say thank you to Kevin Appleby for being my guest
And thank you to Graham Arrowsmith for being my guest.
today. Again, I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
And once again, I've been Kevin Appleby, asking the questions that Graham didn't answer.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Yeah.